Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Game podcast. I am your host, Kyle King, seven-time published author, CEO, and founder of the Writer's Game. And today we're going to talk to you about one thing that we always talk about is magnifying your voice and monetizing your message. I have with me the queen of efficiency, the queen of understanding how to habitize your life in a productive, intentional, but also a purposeful way. Erin, how are you doing?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. This has been a conversation that it's taken too long for us to have, but I'm so excited. And there's so many questions that I have, but the first one that I always love to ask is outside of all of the questions that you normally get in regards to your professional career, you're an expert, you're a high-level CEO, you're doing amazing things. What is the question that you wish that more people asked you about you?
Oh, look at you starting off with a bang. I wish more people asked me about like what I really see for myself. People sort of, ask me about particular projects or they ask me about something new that I'm doing at this very moment. And I wish people knew that I like have this bigger vision that I'm okay with it being a slow access to it. I'm sort of doing the crumb trail to what I see in the future.
Interestingly, so that's an interesting segue. What do we see in the future, Erin?
So I'm really about chasing sunrises and sunsets. That's for me. I look forward to a life in which all over the world I can see a sunrise or a sunset in a new place. And starting my own business and doing work that I'm doing right now, to me, is that crumb trail to get me to that type of lifestyle. I'll always be working because I love to work and do new things and challenge myself. But it would be amazing to open my cup of coffee one day in one city and have a glass of wine in another.
Oh, that's beautiful. That actually is the life for me. That's the life for me. So before we get started, I know who you are from a professional realm and then, sharing things personally as well. But for everyone else who doesn't have the chance to know the amazing you, how would you define who you are? And how are you leveraging not only your story, but the stories of others to transform lives?
Well, I'm really a multi-passionate person. My career has given me ample opportunities to learn a wide variety of new skills, both by choice and just by the nature of particular roles that I was in. So, about 10 years ago, when I realized I had a pretty high level experience across a variety of professions, and I was a true generalist. I could do a lot of different things. I was sort of that age old phrase, a joker, or what was it? Oh gosh, I'm going to say it wrong now because we're here, right? A master of none, right? Like a joker of all, a master of none. And so for me, I really had that opportunity then to say, now that no one else is directing what I'm learning, what would I learn by choice? And so that's really where I have taken my career. And every year, I really challenge myself to learn something new. And so I really try to bring people along with that journey and share what I've learned so other people don't spend the time, the energy, the early morning wake up calls learning something that I've spent hours learning myself. And really now they can leverage it and do it for themselves. So whether that's learning about habits for healthy families, or that's learning about self-publishing, or that's learning about some other set of skills, I like to be able to transfer those to others and then admittedly go and learn something else.
No, I love that. I think everything that we learn as a part of this life experience is not just for us. And the things that are poured into us are meant for us to pour into other people or organizations or communities. But one thing that I've learned through this process of life is that what we learn on the process, on pursuit, on the journey, is much more captivating and purposeful and powerful than what we learn once we have the thing that we were building for. What is one thing that you've learned on this journey that has transformed the woman, the person, the professional that you are today?
As you were asking the question, a very specific example came up for me. So I had started doing self-publishing related to early childhood reading, workbooks, activities that related to my daughter and the early childhood background that I had. In 2021, my mother ended up having a severe stroke that required her to relearn how to talk, how to walk, how to write, all basic skills in her late 70s. And so in that moment, I actually was able to work with her therapist and pull out tools that were early childhood tools that I could apply to her occupational and physical therapy and support her. And what I never realized until we were walking through the process is things that I had created actually could help my mom learn how to write and talk and relearn basic habits and skills. And so to your point is we never know where a path that feels intuitive, that we're learning a new skill, we're trying a new idea, we think it has one purpose, but ultimately if we're open to it, it might actually have a completely different purpose waiting for us that we just don't see coming yet.
That's so powerful, and I appreciate you for sharing that. But I want to stay there for a second. In this moment that you recognized, Erin, that you had developed and built something that could help your mother after this traumatic experience, not just in the moment, but something that helped her progress forward.
Mhm.
What did that do to you? What were the emotions? What were the feelings of potential even pride that you felt through this moment?
Well, she was a very thoughtful supporter of anything that I did. And so she was that one that bought my book as soon as she could, if she could figure out how to order it herself on Amazon. Or, she would create cards that were based on quotes or images that were in my first books. And so for her to be able to even see what I was doing, participate in it, and know that I was contributing to her care in any way, um, I was literally creating them while I was sitting at her bedside. So for me, it was a moment where I kept saying to myself, like, I can't believe I'm here and I could stay focused on the anxiety and the worry or the aspect of that. But doing the journals and the workbooks gave me something productive to focus on. And then I could take him down the hall and I would show him to her therapist and I would say, okay, right, I'm here. How can I make him better? How can I make him useful for other people that were here? And it gave me a healthy distraction while I was coping and managing with something that could be, ever so compassing at that point in time.
That's amazing. And it leads me to my next question, because there's a certain level of habits and decisions and actions and consistency and a system that you built out in this moment, for her to transition forward. And your model and your brand is the Habitized life, the Habitized lifestyle, and it really helps people spark curiosity in a sense. But in your perspective and in your own definition, how would you define what it means to live a Habitized life?
So for me, the habitized life is about making space for the things that are more important to you. As I often give for families the example of a habitized morning routine, right? A routine that both the parents and the family members know exactly what's going to happen as best as they can on any given day. When you know you get out the door and you do it the same way repeatedly, right? You start to make space in your morning routine versus creating that angst and that chaos and the yelling, right? That can be so common in families getting ready for the day and getting off to school. So, what I say is the habitized life is about creating space, space for whatever is meaningful in your particular life or your family's life to say, you know what, if we just do things the same way repeatedly, it's not boring or
Mhm.
it's not repetitive or it's not monotonous. It actually serves a bigger purpose, and it gives us an opportunity to maybe take longer hugs or just be in silence or listen to something like positive songs in the car versus yelling and seeing who forgot their lunchbox.
Exactly.
Right. So for me, that's one example of how a habitized routine when it comes to families can serve a purpose. And I've figured out now over these past couple of years how to do that same sort of connection points around curiosity and confidence and consistency when it comes to writers, and how that can enhance their lifestyle and their publishing goals or writing goals.
So I am so interested, and I'm sure you knew this was going to come up because, as a part of my mission is to help fathers enhance, not only their lives, but the lives of their children and the relationship that they have with the mother of their child as well. Um, and with that, habits, systems, and certain environments for that child are important. So before we move forward, I'd love to hear how could a parent, whether a mother or a father, help their child or create a safe environment that is productive for all stakeholders in this household through your model of this habitized life? What is the first step that someone could take?
I come at this from a couple different angles. One, as a professional in early childhood, for many years supporting many different types of families and different family dynamics. I also come at it from a personal level, when it comes to co-parenting in my own life, and I know how challenging that can be when people have different expectations of what habits and routines and systems can look like.
Of course.
And so, what I often say, both in my own life and to other families, is really if you can get on the same page about the most high priorities, then the rest can sort of over time fall into place. I'm gonna use one small thing as an example. If every household, whether they're in the same place, or every parent, right, whether they're in the same place or they're in different places, said, starting the day with a positive message is what's most important, right? So one family can have the positive messages, a mantra you say in the mirror, and the other household can have a positive message that's reading a passage from a book. But the consistency for the child is they know every morning I start my day with a positive message, regardless of where I am. And so I say to families, if they can pick some really high priorities, if it's getting somewhere on time, right? Sense of time in some households is, 5 minutes before, sense of time can be 15 minutes after. But if you can decide together, then a child or a family knows we keep that as a consistent priority, regardless of where we are.
It's this conversation is going to go in a lot of different ways because I'm definitely there with you, especially as somebody that's continuing to learn the co-parenting process. But I believe that we've been able to build such an amazing relationship thus far that I've seen the horror stories in working in
Mhm.
education. So I'm super proud of where we've been able to go. But I love what you said in regards to identifying the priorities. And it takes, as a parent, understanding that parenting isn't about you. It's about
Mm-mm.
creating a system of support and love for your child, creating a safe and productive environment for your child. And when we relinquish our control of what we would want things to be, and prioritize the best things for the child, it allows us to have a better relationship, but also be able to raise this child in a house of love. My question, though, for you, Erin, is how do we work together communicatively, relationally? How do we work together to be able to choose which priorities are most important? And how do we even know that those are priorities in the first place?
Mm. So I'll give a couple of examples that, based on my past career, that had worked with families in trying to have ways to communicate that were beyond what households where they are two-parent families find success. So, in one example would be I actually helped a family create a co-parenting journal. The parents learned very early on, and the child was young enough that they were not able to have all the language skills to describe things themselves. And so this family was at a crossroads because every time they would communicate in person, they would just never see each other. They would never hear each other. It would always get caught up in something else. So we created a co-parenting journal where on transition days, the journal went with the child in the backpack. So when they were at the one parent's house, there were daily notes about what happened. And then it went to the other house and there were daily notes about what happened. But the parents didn't actually have to communicate about all the things. And then with one family, we actually had to take it a step further to answer your second part of your question, which was to help them separately decide what the priorities were and actually created the like sort of guided journal experience for them. So that way, the person who is the long-winded writer didn't look like they were a better parent. They just wrote more. And the other parent who like wrote bullets didn't look like they were the worst parent because they just bulleted, right? So it's coming up with meeting people where they are. And for those who may feel like they're not sure if that experience would serve them, I can say that for my own personal life experience, you know, where my daughter's dad and I started on a communication level, we are now at age 9 and we are at a completely different place. And so, you know, it's worth figuring out what techniques work for your family. I realize everybody's journey will not turn out to be a success story. And our story isn't over either, right? As co-parents, things can change at different points in time that you don't expect. But if you can create some very, very short list, people will often create, you know, a 10, 12, 20 list of priorities. And I say 3 to 5. Right? Like if you can do 3 to 5 well, then you can grow, but don't try to set yourself up for failure. Try to set yourself up for success.
That's powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that, Erin. I think it's important. You know, I've heard so many different models, but that's a great perspective. Just 3 to 5 priorities. Let's sit down. Let's talk about them, or leverage journal entries to be able to collaborate together. But remembering, and anybody on here, remembering that sometimes we have to take a step back from our own expectations, our own wants and desires, and recognize this one question that I was even exposed to: what is best for my child in this moment? And is what I want enhancing their life or creating more conflict and friction? And for me, it empowered me to step back and stop trying to control every outcome, even in this realm of protecting your child and allowing both parties to bring to this child their best abilities or their gifts or their priorities as well. So I really appreciate you sharing that. When we think about how you're sparking curiosity with writers in this self-publishing process, what inspired you to do that? And what is your goal deep down with helping people tell their stories?
For me, curiosity lends us to think about a set of goals in a slightly different way. You know, when I admire goal setting. I was raised on goal setting. I know its effectiveness, but sometimes our goal can set us up for feeling like the process isn't as important.
Mm,
So for me, I love people getting curious about what they can learn about themselves, what they thought they'd love to do that was in their head would be this amazing experience, and they go to do it and they're like, oh, actually I don't enjoy it,
at all.
right? It's actually I want to stop. So I don't live with the regret that I didn't try. I tried and I realized what I thought it was, it isn't. And so curiosity just allows us to enjoy the next steps of what we learn about ourselves, what we learn about others. I give an example, and this is to me one of the a couple of one of the most rewarding moments is there was a senior citizen that wanted to write a book. And initially, her sales were not going as well as she hoped. And I said, can I just help you take a step back? Do you realize that other senior citizens are not investing in this dream that they had been holding on to, where they were creating a book that's based on experiences watching their grandson? And they've thought about maybe they'll write the book, but they didn't spend the money to do the book. And they didn't challenge their brains and their skills and their potential in writing the book. And it was almost like this other aha moment for her where she thought, you're right. Parts of this are not as much about the sales as they are about showing other people that you can do things that you didn't know you were capable of. And sometimes that maybe is the reward that you're looking for, because it opens your mind to other potential projects that you were also holding on to.
That brings me to an interesting question. What is something that at one point you didn't believe was possible, and through perseverance and through work or even relationship, you figured it out, and now you're actively doing it, and it brings you a sense of pride?
So I'm thinking multiple examples in my head, but one in particular, I will say, so I had this idea when my daughter was really young. I had an invention in my mind. I never raised around inventors. I had no clue where to start, where to go. So I scoured the internet. I called a random person that I met through only social media. And I said, hey, you have part of the product that I want, but you don't have the other part. Would you be willing to help me? And she saw what I saw. We met over the internet. She introduced me to people. She helped me create a prototype. I'd never met her. I'd never met any of her contacts in person. And I then went and said, oh, wait, I have to raise money for this. So then I went and learned how to do a Kickstarter campaign, which I never knew before. And so I did a Kickstarter campaign that was successful. And I did the actual production of the product. And I never knew all of that was in me. I had no clue other than 4 a.m. inspirational coffee cups that I could pull this off. And I just kept asking for support, I think, presumably in the right way, which helped people help me. And I did the Kickstarter and I invented the product just pre-COVID. And so unfortunately, it didn't quite take off where I had envisioned it at the time. But I never say never. I still hold on to them. I think its potential just maybe takes a different way, shape, or form because I believe in it. But if nothing else, I am super proud of myself and all those that helped me along the way to say, like, just because I hadn't ever done it before didn't mean I couldn't transfer skills that I did have to try this other idea.
That is such a beautiful story in so many different ways. And if anybody's watching right now, leave a comment, ask Erin questions. But it's been two different stories in this conversation in regards to, the first story was the woman, the senior citizen that wrote her book and didn't have the sales and was a bit discouraged. And you had to remind her that the goal wasn't the sale, the goal was the book. And for you, with you taking action, you having this vision in the middle of the night, you taking action and you figuring it out and you asking questions and you creating systems of support for yourself and you being willing to humble yourself on the process, but also be an active learner through the process. And you launched it and you raised money and you launched it. Mm-hmm. And even though it didn't take off immediately and become Apple overnight, you did it. And I think there's so many people that sit on ideas because they only identify problems and they want to make things perfect. And the perfection is paralyzing them from just doing the thing that makes them happy. What would be your advice to that individual that is stuck in a trance of, I need to make it perfect before I launch it, and how much time they're really losing?
Don't wait. Don't wait. I could give you even more examples if we had more time, that if I had waited until I knew what I was doing, not only would I have never been where I am now. So,
Mm,
right, everything leads to the next step. I also would have missed out on all the people that I would have connected to along the way and all the smaller lessons that I would have missed in the process of trying an idea before I was ready. Um, I would say, people do have a tendency to aim for perfection before they put themselves out there. And the irony is that you don't even know what perfect is because you haven't done the first thing.
exactly. Exactly.
So your perfect is based on somebody else's perfect
Mm,
and what you see someone else doing. And therefore, you're assuming that their perfect is equivalent to what yours could be. And the answer is it's not, because what is waiting for you is not ever going to be the same thing as somebody else.
that's good.
I've watched some people, put out books and achieve incredible success at the day one of their book sales, right? They really followed all the tools for pre-sales and reviews. They did all the steps. But what I've also seen people do in that process is that they lost sight of the experience in order to achieve a particular goal. Um, and then, right, then they're like, oh, wait, then I've hit this pinnacle, but I almost feel like now there's a backswing that I can't keep that up.
That's
And
good.
so they either burn themselves out or they hit a level of disappointment early on. Versus sometimes it's like, just assume the next thing is your small accomplishment. That'll reveal something, keeps you curious to learn what the next step is. And that's very much where I think curiosity can allow us permission to both open new doors or close doors that we thought we wanted to walk through that ultimately we realize aren't meant for us.
Erin, this may be a tough question, but I'm interested in knowing, what is a door on this journey of becoming who you are today that was necessary for you to close
Mm.
so that you could become the person that you are today?
Oh gosh, I'm sure there are multiple doors that I thought were meant to work out for me,
What was,
professionally, and then where I am now. But go ahead.
I want to know what was the door.
Oh gosh. So I'll tell you a story about a point in my professional career in which I'd really hit a pretty early pinnacle, both age and at this particular employer. I was in my higher ed career. I was again achieving a level of professional success that I could not have had on my radar screen decades prior to that. And I was really grateful. Financially, I was incredibly stable. Um, I was living a really good life. And at that point, my daughter had turned about 2, give or take. And I was on my phone quite a bit for that career. And she kept asking me to put down my phone. And it was a moment where I realized that I was at a crossroads as a parent and a professional, to
Wow.
say I could keep down this path and I could keep rationalizing to her on all the off hours that my phone had a purpose and who I needed to respond to was important, or I could choose her.
Mm,
And ultimately, as a woman who had reached a really high level of her career, it was an incredibly difficult choice to walk away from that role and take a pay cut to learn something completely different, in order to set up a lifestyle that gave me something that she could still be proud of because she would see me as a professional woman. But when I was off, quote unquote, I was off.
wow.
And that door closing by choice, almost a little bit by force and also by choice, for me, 1,000% changed my trajectory to where I am now.
I kudos to you. Kudos to you, because there's so many parents, professionals that aren't willing to make the sacrifice to be able to create the life that their children deserve. Not even that they need, that they deserve. A few days ago, I was having a conversation with my son, and I was like, Carter, do I work too much? And he was like, yes. And I was like, okay, well, what would you want it to look like? And he was like, well, I want you to be off the phone. You're always taking calls or on your computer taking calls. And I said, okay. I said, well, dad has to be able to work to do some things.
Mhm.
He was like, so I was like, well, what would you want that to look like, Carter? He said, well, I want you to be done working by the time I get home from school. So I said, okay, you get dropped off around 7 a.m. You're home around 2:30. I said, well, let me negotiate. Can I take calls in the car on our way back home? Maybe.
Mhm.
He was like, yes, that's not a problem. But once we get into the driveway, and once we pull into the garage, I need you done working. I said, okay. And before I went to explain why I work, I asked him a question. I said, well, how does it make you feel when I'm on calls or podcasting or doing different things? He said, it makes me feel sad. And I had to just sit for a moment and ask myself, does me wanting to create $100 million company outweigh the 100 million moments that I want to be able to spend with my child? Does me really wanting to strive for success in that way outweigh the father that I want to be in this household? And at that moment, I said no. And it takes me having to design a habitized life so that from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., I am structured and systemized in my time. So by the time he gets home, he gets all of dad, not 60% or 30% or 20%. And I think there's a lot of parents that need your help in creating a habitized life so that they can still take advantage of their professional success and their purpose while still being able to create balance so that they can show up and be present in their children's lives while still being able to maintain their physical and mental health as well. And I think it's possible if we create this lifestyle. Erin, what is the first step for somebody to be able to create this life?
So I'm going to start by helping take what you just said one step further, which I commend you for having that epiphany and that moment and that sort of surrender to the responsibilities of parenthood, that you can do all these other things in a day and you have a lot of other accomplishments within you. But it's surrendering to, at least for this point in time, I'm going to put parenthood as one of my key roles that'll drive my day and my thought process. And I would say the next step of that is to not only realize what type of dad you are showing up today, it's actually showing your son what type of father he will show up as when it is his time. Because that's really the cycle. And that's the early childhood person in me, is that what they are learning in your home will become a reflection of the type of individual and parent and partner that they will be in their own home. And so setting up set of boundaries, finding your own balance, communicating those priorities, but also giving yourself that authenticity to say, you know what, right now I'd really love to do X and I'm feeling conflicted. But I want to let you know I'm feeling conflicted, but I choose to spend time with you.
That's
And
good.
that is not coming from a place of trying to make your child feel guilty. It's helping them understand that, again, you can have those multiple levels of feelings happening at the same time, but help them express and learn how to safely express what it is that they're choosing to do when they're feeling multiple things.
Exactly.
And you are that model of that for him. And we are the model of that for all of our kids who are watching us. So we may feel frustrated trying to get our kids out the door, right? And we may not have our habits all in place on a particular morning. But sometimes what I've had to do in the past is stop myself, and I will literally apologize in the moment to my daughter and say, you know what? I'm really sorry. I didn't show up on my A game today. And I am actually taking that out on this moment. I'm not taking it out on you. I'm taking it out in the moment. And I'm sorry for not stopping myself and actually getting myself up on time and, prioritizing my health this morning. So sometimes, again, it's not in always having the right tracker, right? Which can be a big misnomer in the world of habits. It's not always about the tracker and checking all the boxes in the way that I talk to people. It's about figuring out how can you communicate and share. You have goals, you want to have systems, but sometimes we show up and we don't do them all right. And so, how can we share those with our families and accept ourselves at the same time?
Erin, this has been phenomenal. And I thank you so, so, so much. Where can we find you and how can we support you?
Yeah, so the habitizelife.com is a website and a blog that I've been running for a few years now. It's really transitioned from broad healthy habits into, again, helping people find their voice through writing, publishing, podcasting, and helping manage that way. So the Habitize Life is the website, and Habitize Publishing is where I'm helping people publish guided journals, workbooks for themselves, for young people, and children's books.
Erin, this has been an enlightening conversation. I love one of the things that you said in regards to I'm not taking it out on you, I'm taking it out on the moment. And for us to be able to design the exact life that not that we want, that we deserve, that we were called to live, it's important for us as individuals, as professionals, as persons, to be able to create a habitized life and a system of support so that we can have space created for all of the things that we need in our lives. Yes, we all wear multiple hats, we all have multiple responsibilities, but it's up to you to choose to take action intentionally so that you can design a life that you're actually happy with and that you're proud of. Your children deserve the best of you. Your job deserves the best of you. And most importantly, you deserve the best of you. Erin, I appreciate you. This is another episode of the Writer's Game podcast where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. And we'll see you guys next episode.